Gervonta Tank Davis and his team issue a very odd warning for their next opponent who should be named soon, and they get real scientific about it. Also, we are going to talk about Gervonta Davis and Canelo Alvarez and the destruction of the PBC. Let's talk about those things in this video. All right. Welcome back. We got a very, very interesting message from Coach Kenny Ellis from the team of Gervonta Davis. One of my favorite people in boxing from the Rise podcast. He and Coach Calvin, shout out to the Rise podcast, Squeeze and Senior as well, or Mr. All Access. Shout out to all of y'all. But very interesting comment comes from Kenny Ellis about their next opponent, who, according to most reports, is Frank Martin. If you're not familiar with who Frank Martin is one of the is the number 3 rated fighter in the WBC, or in the WBA rather, and I do believe that he is the highest rating. He's in the top 10 of all major sanctioning bodies, and as a result is, I would say, at lightweight, as far as available opponents, yeah, he's the best available opponent for Gervonta Davis in his next fight, and it had been announced or heavily implied that he is going to be the next guy. Well, what he said was the following: Phase 1, up early studying Frank Martin's skull, very thin zygomatic bone, thin muscle layer, very high maximus sinus. Man, oh man. Good kid, good team, though. No disrespect. So just so you know, the zygomatic bone is right here. It is the bone that makes it look like you have the bone that gives you a cheekbone. Right here, right? The zygomatic bone is up in here. And then, of course, whenever you're talking about maxillary sinuses or sinuses, you're talking about here. And I really think he's talking about that hump on his nose. So what is he saying? He's saying that's the spot that they're going to aim for in that fight, and they could very well be breaking some bones up there, which happens in boxing. I don't know if you've ever seen the fight between Mike Tyson and, what is the name of that? The dirtiest fighter ever, man. Polish fighter. Name was, name's on the tip of my tongue. He's a guy that wound up getting disqualified because of he cheated Riddick Bowe so bad. But I think the zygomatic bone is what Mike Tyson broke on him because, high cheekbones, right? I think, and that's essentially what they're saying is Frank Martin's got high cheekbones, and he does have high cheekbones. Also, in boxing, my understanding has been, I've heard this before, people that have, just sharp features can get hurt and wind up, they can get people with bigger humps on their nose, get their nose broke more easily versus people that have smaller bones, all of that stuff. So clearly looking to be aggressive with Frank Martin. Man, I'm telling you, I certainly hope that this fight gets made, and it's going to be real interesting, this fight with Frank Martin and Gervonta Davis, because I've done videos before about this before, and where people were talking about, whether or not Gervonta fights for legacy or he's always fighting for money. I'm very interested in seeing what people think this fight is, because Frank Martin is a very difficult opponent. He is somebody that should be considered a difficult opponent. He's one of the best contenders in boxing, an undefeated fighter, fights southpaw, can punch, can box, can do the whole thing. Now, obviously, people are going to favor Gervonta Davis in that fight. However, it's not something where you can say, okay, this is a guy who's got 1 million, got 10 million Instagram followers, and we're doing it, as kind of like doing it like a Jake Paul type exhibition thing. This is a legitimate fight. Now, as it relates to Canelo Alvarez, there's a lot of talk about how he's leaving, how he left to go to the zone, or he's going to go to the zone to fight probably Edgar Berlanga, because Oscar De La Hoya said he's not paying $35 million guarantee for Canelo Alvarez to fight Jaime Munguia. So that leaves somebody trying to pay Canelo Alvarez a ton of money to fight Edgar Berlanga. And I promise you, if he goes to fight Edgar Berlanga and they're offering that type of money, they're going to want a commitment past one fight for Canelo Alvarez. So that brings up the question of, neither one of these guys are going to be fighting in fights where their opponent is some really big name, where it really is going to be drawing a lot of attention. And which one do you prefer, right? To me, I think that Canelo Alvarez is really kind of fading out of this face of boxing thing. And it's not a situation where he has to. I think it's a situation where he's managing himself and making decisions that are going to push him out of that, push him out of there. And this particular fight with Frank Martin for Gervonta, I think that this is coming off a 1.2 million pay-per-view, $23 million gate. So whenever you do that, every fighter that has done that for the first time, you're going to have a little bit of a dip, or you're going to have a dip in the second one, in the fight right after that. But it's just going to be really interesting to see, what the trajectory of these guys' career is. Personally, man, I respect from Gervonta Davis that he is willing to, get paid what he weighs. And I think that's the major difference between him and Canelo. Canelo wants those gigantic guarantees, and he wants those gigantic guarantees for anybody that he fights. And I think that he was spoiled in that regard when he got that big contract with those big guarantee purses with DAZN after he had that Gennady Golovkin fight. But I think what he's going to find out, especially if he goes to DAZN for this next one, man, they're probably not going to be they're probably not going to be doing that for all of those for multiple fights again. And I don't really think it's good for boxing for people to do that. At least, let me put it this way. When you have to fight somebody and you don't have a big guarantee and you've got to generate the money through the pay-per-view sales, through the gate, then you have motivation to give people fights that they want to see. But when you get paid huge guarantees just to have your name on there, then you wind up taking a bunch of fights that you feel are safe fights. And that is one of the complaints that at least was thrown at Roy Jones Jr. by HBO executives, or at least like Larry Merchant and them, when they talked about him at HBO and how they had given him a multi-fight deal, and when he picked the fighters for the multi-fight deal, they were people that they didn't want to see him fight, and how they would be hesitant to do that in the future. Well, I think Canelo Alvarez is that on Computerall, just absolutely. Just as over the top, man. But this fight with Frank Martin or Gervonta, this is a legitimate risk for this man. But anyway, that's my take on the matter. Please let me know what you think in the comments section. And with that, I'm out. Deuces.